Hello, mentors. Welcome to our podcast series, Mentorships in Education, brought to you by Just Education at justeducationfirst.com. I am your host, Judith Epstein. I am very excited about the wide range of experts who have volunteered to give up their time and expertise. They will share their innovative ideas, their exciting perspectives, their rich resources, and their research with us. Please continue to delve into these topics on their websites and with your legal counsel, healthcare provider, and education professional. Our guests will have information that will be relevant to mentors supporting struggling students, parents, teachers, administrators, legal support, and health professionals. We will address all levels of education with issues that affect academic performance. Our goal is to open discussions and introduce a variety of approaches to those searching for information in a free venue. So mentors, let me introduce our guest for today. Hello, mentors. Welcome to the podcast, Mentorships in Education. We're brought to you by Just Education at justeducationfirst.com. I hope you will go to our website and check over our guests and look at our topics and see if you can find something that you're interested in. We're also on social media, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get podcasts from. Today we have a very special guest, an interesting guy who I've been looking forward to speaking with, Ron Sandison. Thank you, Ron, for being with us today. I appreciate all the time you've been giving me. We had an interesting talk already. So before we get started, I thought it might be nice to tell our listeners a little bit about you. Ron works full-time in the medical field and is a professor of theology at the Destiny School of Ministry. He's an advisory board member of the Autism Society Faith Initiative of Autism Society of Americans. Ron has a Master of Divinity from Oral Roberts University and is the author of A Parent's Guide to Autism, a practical advice and biblical wisdom published by the Charisma House and Thought, Choice, and Action. He's memorized over 15,000 scriptures, including 22 complete books of the New Testament and over 5,000 quotes. He speaks at over 70 events a year, including 20 or more educational conferences. He and his wife, Kristen, reside in Manchester Hills, Michigan, with their daughter. I'm going to ask you to pronounce her name. Do I get it right? Michaela?
Michaela Marie.
Okay, Michaela Marie.
Yep. She's 4 now.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about where you'll be able to contact Ron and learn more about what it is he's doing. And all of these things that Ron has done are amazing in and of themselves. But I want to tell you, he doesn't say anywhere in there, but Ron was diagnosed with autism when he was a baby. And his mother was told at the time all the things that he would never do. And that's what intrigued me so much when I spoke with Ron, because all of those things that his mom was told he would never do, not only has he done them, but he's gone way beyond those things and leading a productive, normal, as a functioning member of society. So, Ron, I think maybe one of the best ways to start for people to really understand the depth of the challenges that you've had growing up is to talk a little bit about your diagnosis and how it was misunderstood at that time and the sacrifices that your mom made for you, just so that we can get a handle on your journey here.
So my amazing journey with autism, it began at 9 months. At 9 months, I was able to say words like mommy. I was developing normal. And then at 18 months, I went from being able to say mommy to only mum. And I went from being able to have eye contact at 9 months to 0 eye contact. And my mom noticed there was something drastically different between me and my brother Steve and my brother Chucky, who were older than me. She immediately took me to a pediatrician. Pediatrician said, men are like fine wine. You got to give them time. Women are like flowers. They'll blossom quickly. And my mom
That's cute. I like that.
The time was the essence. So she immediately got me in intense speech therapy. I was in intense speech therapy all the way from age 2 to 16. When I was age 7, my speech was still delayed. My brother Chuck would introduce me to people saying, you got to meet my brother Ron. I think he's from Norway. He'd have me talk. No one knew what I was saying. So he became an expert on Norwegian languages. Also, when I was 7 years old, I began kindergarten, and my development was so delayed with interaction, with being able to communicate and socialize with the other children. The school specialists and wanted to label me emotionally impaired. And my mom said, it's not emotional, it's neurological. And if you can't tell me what's going in my son's head, I'll get back to you in the fall after testing and tell you exactly what it is. She sent me to Henry Ford Hospital, one of the top neurological specialist doctors in the state and in the United States. Dr. Delgado tested me. And in 1982, I was diagnosed with autism at age 7. And the school specialist, when they heard I had autism, said, your son will never read beyond the 7th grade level, never attend college, never have meaningful relationships, never exceed in sports. And my mom was determined to prove the experts wrong. She quit her job as a full-time art teacher and became a full-time Ron teacher. And using pre-ABA therapy methods, art therapy, speech therapy, and using my special interest in animals and prairie dogs, I was able to graduate from Oral Roberts University with bachelor's degrees in psychology and theology and a 3.9 grade point average, a master of divinity with a perfect 4.0. I got married 8 years ago, and I got married on December 7th. For you history buffs, that's the anniversary of Pearl Harbor and having autism. I came in like a kamikaze, a whirlwind of fire. And on March 20th, 2016, Mikhail Marie was born. The same day I got home from the hospital after my wife had a C-section. It was painful for her. There's a book waiting for me, my first copy of A Parent's Guide to Autism, Practical Advice, Biblical Wisdom. So I had given birth to a book. She gave birth to Michaela, but she had a C-section, so it was much more harder than the birth I had to give birth.
I love that. I love that analogy. She was pregnant for almost a year, and you wrote a book for a year, and you gave birth at the same time. That's awesome.
At the same time, only mine, I didn't have a scar of a C-section.
Oh, but I bet you had other kinds of scars.
Oh, yeah, it took a lot of work. And then last year, or 2 years ago, my second book came out. My third book's coming out April 2021, Views from the Spectrum, which will be another 220-page book. And none of this would have been possible without my mom's love and acceptance, my parents' help, professionals working with me, and the grace of God. And it didn't only end there. When I was diagnosed in 1982, only 1 in 10,000 people were diagnosed with autism in the U.S. Now it's 1 in every 59 children, 1 in every 39 males. And with education, when I was growing up, they had the 2-teacher rule. It's not like today where we have specialized education for children with autism. You had a teacher at the front, teacher at the back. Teacher at the front made sure you didn't go through the front door. Teacher in the back made sure you didn't sneak out the back. They were babysitting kids. My mom was inspired by Proverbs 22:29. You see a man skilled in his labor, he was served before kings. He was not served before obscured men or common men. And my mom told the experts, if you put my son in your education program, the best he'll be is bagging groceries at Kroger's. The best he'll be is washing dishes at Big Boys. The best he'll be is holding the door open at a hotel. Well, my son has great gifts and talents, and I'm going to refine those gifts and talents so he serves before kings. And that's exactly what she did. She worked with me. She worked with the education specialist. She educated him on autism. During that time, they said, well, we'll only teach him 50% of time use of visual learning, and the other 50% phonetic. And my mom said, then he'll get 50% learning because he can't learn anything phonetic. And to this day, I still can't learn anything phonetically. To me, the greatest scam or fraud all time, it wasn't Enron, it was hooked on phonics.
Oh, that's a riot. You mentioned your love of animals and how your mom tapped into that to help you develop and socialize, perhaps. Did she use it for that purpose? How is it used? Talk about that. What
so
did
here's
she do?
how it was used. Is my favorite book growing up was No Man's Valley, and it was a book about endangered species. And having autism, I felt like an endangered species. I felt like I was the only one who had autism, being one of only 10,000 children.
Wow.
And she took that book and she noticed that whenever I'd write my name, I'd write it backwards. So I not only had autism, I had dyslexia. So she'd have me draw pictures of animals, tell her stories. She'd write down the stories, and being a visual learner, when I looked at her writing and I'd rewrite it, I'd write it the way I saw it, which was the right way. Within 2 years of using art, drawing pictures, telling stories, and rewriting, I went from dyslexia to no dyslexia. It went away because my neuropaths found new ways to express themselves and code information. She also took my love of prairie dogs and had me tell her stories of prairie dogs and draw pictures of prairie dogs. And when I was 4th grade, my special ed teacher, Miss Melanie, saw that I was a great artist. So she had me draw for the Detroit Edison poster contest, a poster of Prairie Pup and his squirrel friends who were kind of squirrely. And I won first prize for all of Oakland County and got to meet Isaiah Thomas, who's now a Hall of Fame basketball player, but it was during his beginning of his career. And my poster, during that time, the commercials for Detroit Edison were look up. And you see a kid and he looks up with Isaiah and he goes, I don't see anything. He goes, good, because there's no electrical wire. So my poster showed Prairie Pup with a hard helmet on with a bunch of squirrels, and they're building a tree fort near electrical wires. And one squirrel is about to hit a transmitter, electrical transmitter, and it says, look up. You don't want to become a fried furry friend. And it won first prize for I think the comic cute. And the artwork.
Who's Prairie Pup? Who is Prairie Pup?
Prairie Pup's a prairie dog.
Is that something that you have? Do you have?
Yeah, I still have Prairie Pup. He's now over 34 years old. I got him when I was 7 years old. I carried him everywhere. And then when I was 16 years old, Prairie Pup became the first prairie dog who was officially expelled from the Rochester Hills public school system. They said at 16 and having a driver's license, I was too old to be carrying a love-worn prairie dog in desperate need of Rogaine. Don't give him Viagra because at his age, he'd have a heart attack. Most prairie dogs only live about 12 years. He's still rocking it, over 34 years old, and he goes all around the world, all around the country. He's been to Israel, he's been to Madagascar, Cameroon, Bulgaria, France, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, you name it, he's been there. And he's got a new friend who I got 5 years ago, the honey badger, and the honey badger goes everywhere too now. And I just ordered a new stuffed animal friend, cost me $100. It's a Tasmanian devil that's yet to come when I do my tour in Australia. What I share when I have the Tasmanian devil when I speak in Australia, I'm going to say this. Thank God my special interest wasn't a Tasmanian devil, and I'll hold out my Tasmanian devil. It's life, because if it was, they wouldn't have been able to expel him from the Rochester Hills public school system.
The honey
so
bear
animals
sounds,
still are a big part.
The honey bear to me sounds like it might be named after your mom. She sounds like
it's
a pretty
honey
tough
badger.
Oh, a badger.
Yeah.
Well, the honey badger, your mom sounds like a pretty tough woman with a very sweet spot. Would you say that the honey badger has any of the characteristics of your mom?
Yeah, I'm going to actually get a tattoo on my shoulder of the honey badger. And it says this, the honey badger, a fierce advocate, and then underneath that, a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
So my mom is definitely a force to be reckoned with.
That's what I was thinking.
She's definitely an advocate. She was famous for saying, advocate for your kid, advocate. And when your child grows up, they'll become an advocator for themselves. And that's exactly what she's done with me. She had the first major Americans with Disabilities case in 1995, Sandison versus the MHSAA, so I could compete on the track team. And she's always been advocating for me since I was a little kid. individual education plans and eyelid and all the stuff that went with education.
Why did you have to bring that to court?
Because my senior year of high school, I was one of the fastest runners in the state of Michigan for the 800-meter relay and the 3,200-meter relay. And I was 3 months over the age requirement, so they weren't going to let me compete on the high school athletic team. And I won my case. I became the first athlete in the state of Michigan and in the United States to compete past the age limit. And then since then, after my case, the MHSAA changed the rule so that now children with autism and young adults with autism are able to compete past the age limit. But I was a trailblazer. I was on every news station. CNN had my case, and every event I ran, there was media, and there was me quoting the Bible, quoting my rights were being violated by MHSAA and Robert Jackman, and who was the head of it. And then finally, with perseverance, I finished the race and got to get full ride to college for cross country and track, and went on to get master's degree. But none of that would have been possible if it wasn't for track and cross country, because when I graduated from high school, I only had a 2.5 grade point average. I didn't even pass the SAT because my focus was on sports. And then as I got into college, my focus became on theology and psychology. And then I was able to succeed in it because whatever my interest is, I become an expert on it. Dr. Tony Atwood said, anything a person with autism loves, they become great at.
I just want to ask you a question. I want to kind of back up a little bit because you talked about the stuffed animal that your mom got you, that you had until you were 15 years old. And I'm wondering what function, when you got that at 7, what was the function that stuffed animal served for you that you felt you needed to have it with you for so long? Did it help you socialize with other people? Did it give you a confidence? Did it develop a personality with you? How did you utilize that?
One of the ways my mom helped me utilize it is to develop social skills. Girls would make prairie pup outfits. One girl made prairie pup a leather jacket. One made him a cowboy outfit. One an astronaut outfit. One made him a dress, but I'd have to find out from Trump if he could ever be in the military after wearing that dress. And it served as a purpose of me being able to communicate, because I had a very difficult time with my social ability to communicate. And I was able to communicate through art, through the prairie dog, through the squirrels I had. And my mom even wrote letters from Cheddar the squirrel that she'd send in the mail to me in 1982. In fact, when she'd send the letters, it was only 12 cents for a letter to be sent. Now it's 62 cents for the everlasting stamp in Michigan. But soon that'll be even more expensive, so it's not really everlasting. But she used that to help me develop those skills, that confidence, the self-efficiency, the belief that when I set about a goal, I was able to accomplish the goal using that prairie dog. And
now, most children who are diagnosed with autism are not found in sports. That's not a customary venue for those children. Am I right or wrong on that?
You're right. There's very few pro athletes on the autism spectrum. I've had the pleasure to interview every pro athlete who is on the autism spectrum. People like Tarko, the pro baseball player for Kansas City, or Clay Marzo, the surfer, or Brittany Tangueri, who's a tennis player, or Armani Williams, a NASCAR driver. I've had the pleasure to meet many of them and also interview them and then find out. We all had something in common. They had a parent, a guardian, or some teacher or someone who believed in them, saw a special gift and refined that gift and helped them to use it. With me, track and cross country, I found out I had a gift in it. We had an Olympics day in 6th grade, and they did the long jump, and I won the long jump for my age. And then after that, I knew when I got that award, we love reinforcement on the spectrum. So I decided I wanted to try track. And in 8th grade, I ran track. I set 3 school records. And then from there, I went on to run in high school and then run in college. And it was a great ability I had, but you notice that track, being a NASCAR driver, being a tennis player, they all have something in common. They're individual sports. And most people with autism thrive if they're going to thrive at sports and individual sports. The only one who's example that is a team sport is Tarko and Walker, who's a hockey player. But most of the time, we on the spectrum thrive in individual type activities. And that's why I was so good at track and cross country.
Your mom encouraged you to participate in sports. And did you have the confidence to do that on your own, or was it your mom that really, kind of encouraged you, pushed you to get involved in that? Because I don't think that's something that most kids who are diagnosed with autism would willingly participate in some of these sports. They would be very self-conscious, I'm guessing, and be afraid of being bullied or made fun of. So how did you overcome that? I mean, were you bullied? Were you made fun of?
There was one time, it's called the Transwa Soup story, where I was bullied during track. My freshman year on the track team, very good runner who actually won the state finals for the 200 meter stole a tarantula, and he ended up being drafted for the Lions, but he ended up not playing for Lions. And he stole a tarantula at a track meet and put it in a Ziploc bag. And another track runner dared me to take a shot put and brew up some tarantula soup. First, I wasn't going to do it. Then he double dog dared me. So I took the shot put and brewed up some stew. And next thing I knew, that athlete who was very big, muscular, played for Ohio State during their heyday, hit me as hard as he could in the stomach. The next day, his friend, who was taller than me and bigger than me, gave me a black eye. So I did experience some bullying, even though I was a great track runner and cross-country runner. It still happened because of my social inability to comprehend risk and danger. Most people, if they knew that guy stole a tarantula, which I knew, they wouldn't mess with him. But I had no natural fear, like the honey badger, of this big football player and track runner.
But your mom, I think you told me when we were speaking before, your mom prepared you a little bit for this, the possibility of being made fun of. I think you used the word something about bulletproofing your child. Did your mom do that for you so that you kind of didn't say, okay, I'm never going to do this sport again, take my stuff, go home, that's it, I'm never going back there?
Yeah, she bully-proofed me. And the way she bully-proofed me was she had friends of my brother who was older than me kind of watch out for me. So when people were bullying me, they'd find out. But sometimes with a person who's a future pro football player, those guys aren't big enough. But she always had people were mentoring me and working with me. And even when the guy hit me in the eye, she ended up getting the police involved so that it didn't happen again. So even with situations like that, she helped bully-proof me by getting the right legal authorities involved and the school involved to make sure that those types of actions were not appropriate. And the person who hit me, both of them on the track team, ended up being suspended for about a week.
Oh, wow.
And not being able to compete much of the season after that.
Your mom recognized the importance, too, of mentors. You mentioned that, of mentors, and you had quite a few mentors over your life. Am I right?
Yeah, and the most famous mentor I had, he just died January 18th, and when he died, the New York Times did a whole page article on him, Dr. Jack Van Impe. And my mom encouraged me with memorizing the Bible verses, which I have over 15,000 memorized, 22 books in the New Testament. And when she found out about Dr. Jack Van Impe, who had thousands of verses, over 15,000 memorized, when he had an open house, she came with me to the open house and introduced me to Dr. Jack Van Impe and said, my son has the same gift you have. And then he started spewing out the verses like a machine gun. I gave him word reference perfect for every verse. And he said, how old are you, son? I said, I'm 18 years old. He said, when you get to college and you have to do an internship, you're going to be working under me and I'm going to mentor you. And when I got to college at Oral Roberts University, I was able to mentor under Dr. Jack Van Impe and learn how to carry on a world ministry. And then that's helped me being able to speak all over the world and be able to speak at over 70 events a year, even at people like Rob Parsley's church, so over 6,500 people sharing my testimony on autism.
There were so many different things I want to ask you, but I want to make sure we get in to your mom's perspective and her philosophy about autism, because I wrote down when we spoke earlier that your mom, I believe it was your mom's belief, where she said autism needs to be refined and not cured. And I think that's such a powerful statement that I wish I could make a plaque and put it up in every school because it's so illustrative of how we need to work with children who are diagnosed with autism, and that's what your mom did. She didn't try to cure you of autism. She took your autism and she found your strengths and she refined those strengths and kind of let go of the stuff you didn't do as well that you couldn't have an effect on, and help you to move forward in those things where you able to do well. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe combine that with the biggest misunderstanding that we have of autism?
Yeah, so autism's not like the flu or COVID. I can't cough on you and you get the autism COVID or the autism flu. But
right.
Autism can be refined. And autism unrefined looks like this. You're walking on a hot black pavement during summertime and your bare feet, and all of a sudden you feel something sharp, jagged. You go down, you pick it up, it's a piece of glass. It's someone was having Miller time, dropped their glass bottle, and now you're having tetanus shot time. It's jagged. Autism unrefined for me was little ability to filter what I'd say. If a thought came in my mind, I'd spew it out. Autism unrefined for me was little ability to control my emotions. But autism refined is you're off that black pavement. You're walking along the ocean. You're walking along Lake Michigan or a big body of water, and your foot feels something good. Dent, dent, feels good. Dent, 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 dent. Pick it up. It's a piece of glass. It's been refined by something greater than itself. It's been refined by the ocean, by ABA therapy, by special education, learning social skills, speech therapy, occupational therapy. Now that piece of glass you put on your neck is jewelry. You put it on your wall as art. And that's what my mom was determined to do with me, is refine those disabilities into things beautiful. The purpose of education isn't to make an autistic person not autistic. It's to make them struggle less with their autism. And that's what my mom realizes. It's not a matter of getting rid of disabilities, because with autism, if you watch me long enough, you're going to hear me say mother and brother rather than mother and brother when I get tired, because I don't have an innate in me to say L words and TH words, but I can compensate with my great memory. And when I'm thinking and I know next thing I'm going to say mother or brother, to make my tongue go between the bridge and come back out, or if I'm using L, make my tongue go up and down, kind of like Daniel and the Karate Kid, up, down, or left, right. I got to think before I speak, and it doesn't come innate language for me like everyone else.
You had a great conversation with Temple Grandin, you told me, and she gave you some interesting perspectives. She also has autism. Can you share some of that?
Yeah, I'd love to share some. So I was presenting with Temple Grandin about 3 years ago at Metro Parent in Troy, Michigan. And the first thing she asked me when I told her I was presenting on autism and athletics, she said, "Do you have a job?" And I said, "I work in the mental health field and I'm a professor of theology." She said, "Well, if you work just in autism, I wouldn't sit down and watch your presentation. But since you work as a theologian and in the mental health field and you're an advocate in the workplace, I'm going to watch your whole presentation." She also said this. She goes, a prairie dog, we shoot that. That could injure cattle. Honey badger, that's a badass. I don't think I could even train it. So she's got a good personality. But one of the things she said is talent attracts mentors. And that's something that's always stuck with me, is that most of my talent wasn't my talent. It was the people I was around. They made me look great. There's an old story about man goes into a bar, says the bartender, you want to see something amazing? And the bartender says, yeah. So he pulls out a little keyboard, he pulls out a frog, and the frog starts playing the keyboard. Says the bartender, you want to see something even more amazing than hair raising? The bartender said, I'd love to. Pulls out a little white mouse, and the white mouse starts dancing and singing to the frog playing the piano. Finally, a businessman says, I'll give you $200 for that white mouse. Man gives him the $200, puts the frog back in his shirt, picks up the piano. As he's walking out, the bartender says, you're an idiot. That frog and mouse combination was better than Elvin's chipmunks. The man looks, he said, no, the guy who paid me $200 for a white mouse is an idiot. You see that frog? He's ventriloquist. That mouse you could get anywhere for $2. And that's how my life has been. I've been great at imitating, great at picking up the talents of other people, and great at getting myself around those great people like Frog and developing those talents and being able to succeed.
Well, I thought people with autism didn't have a sense of humor. Where did you get yours from?
My dad. My dad has a great sense of humor. Here's my dad's favorite joke. I just the other day was telling a patient, man's going on a first date. He's got really bad gas as he's walking up to the house, and he's thinking, I got to hold this back. The mom answers the door, and she has a little dog, Max. So he's like, I'm going to just a little bit out. So he goes, Max! He goes, oh, thank God. She thinks it's a dog, not me. So he lets a little more out. Max! Oh, I can let the rest out. Max, get away from that guy before he craps on you. And that's where I get my great sense of humor. My dad always has a joke. He's always he's taught me to be witty, kind of have that G.K. Chesterton humor for a theologian. And even C.S. Lewis, a great theologian and writer, had a great sense of humor. And I think that's where I get it. It's from my dad.
You told me that Temple Grandin told you that people with autism were expert imitators, and you said that you're a great, an expert imitator. You also mentioned to me that when you see someone with autism, you ask about the effects of autism rather than the diagnosis.
Yeah, because the diagnosis usually, if they say they're low functioning, it just means they're nonverbal. But they may be higher functioning than someone who speaks because they can take care of themselves. They have hygiene. They can cook. They can clean. They can even drive. They just can't speak. Okay.
There's so many things here. Your perspective is so interesting. I want you to take a few minutes because I don't want to run out of time. And I want you to talk about your book, Parents' Guide to Autism. Can you tell us what your message is in the book and what some of the important topics that you cover in the book, where our parents who are listening, or teachers who work with children who have autism, or parents who have children who are diagnosed with autism, why might they read your book? What is in there that they might be looking for?
Hope. And the reason I wrote my book is I interviewed 50 of the top experts in the autism field, people like Dr. William Coiney, the founder of UCLA Autism Center, people like Temple Grandin, and then 50 of the most famous people on the autism spectrum. And I share their perspective with my own story. And I begin with diagnosis all the way to adulthood. How do you develop those skills? How do you develop those abilities? How do you develop self-efficiency, motivation? And then what are the toughest areas people with autism struggle with? Social interaction, sensory issues, bullying, self-esteem. And I look at all those issues, share the expert's opinion, and then share the real expert's opinion, the parents, along with the children on the spectrum, and show how to develop those skills, those talents, so that right now it's only 3% of people with autism are gainfully employed and only 10% are married. so they're able to develop the skills that accomplish their dreams and their purposes in life.
Dating and must have been a challenge to you. I think when I asked you about it before, you said, you gave me a little bit of a hint about your sense of humor. You said that your approach to dating was crash or burn.
Yeah, so I dated over 300 women on Plenty of Fish. Thank God there wasn't Plenty of Squid, or I'd still be single. And learn those skills and then learn from my mistakes. So I crashed and burned a lot, and then finally found the right one, and my wife, Kristen. And now we're married 8 years. We've been together 10 years. And if you hear that noise in the background, that's a rabbit I caught in my in-laws' backyard.
Oh, wow.
That's in my third book, the story on. And I caught the rabbit the first week me and my wife met. So the rabbit's now 10 years old.
Your first book is Parents' Guide to Autism. That's the first one. We're going to have a link to that if people want to check that out. Your second book is what?
Thought, Choice, Action, Decision-Making that will reach to the power of the Holy Spirit. It's on St. Augustine. We have more of St. Augustine words and writing than anyone from the 4th century earlier. We have over 1 million words of his in writing. Every listener here probably knows at least one quote from St. Augustine, even they don't know it's from St. Augustine. And it's on spiritual growth and his theory of spiritual growth and how to grow.
Okay, so if someone's looking for some spiritual direction, this might be something that they would be interested in. This is
the perfect good book, yep.
And the third book that is coming out soon?
Is Views from the Spectrum. It's 20 of the most amazing people on the autism spectrum. People like Haley Moss, the lawyer. I interview her, share her story. Rachel Barcelona, Miss Florida, and a hockey player, pro baseball player, NASCAR driver. So they're amazing people like that I interviewed, and I interviewed their family and share their stories and their remarkable journey with autism. And then it also gives practical advice in the book too for each chapter.
I think you kind of shared with me that you also might be going into politics. Is that right?
Yeah, I hope to be the first autistic congressman. And my goal is to run in 4 years. I'm working on putting that together. One of my goals is to have universal health care for everyone.
Do you have any speaking engagements coming up pretty soon? Is anything?
Yeah, tomorrow I'm speaking Woodside Special Needs Ministry. I better look good because I'm going to be on camera, not in person. I still don't have any in-person events. Even in October, I'm going to be speaking in New Jersey, but I'm going to be speaking from Michigan to a conference in New Jersey because it's not in person.
Nothing's in person.
And I'm waiting for it to get back. I think they need to open stuff up. It's been long enough. I look at the numbers, and even though way more cases are coming, there's not way more deaths. Where we're going to be for the next year and a half, we're going to have 600 deaths a day across the United States, but it's far fewer than auto accidents, deaths a day. It's far fewer than cancer, heart disease, and dying from lung failure. And of that 600, 40% are people in nursing home who would have been in God's waiting room already, just waiting for him to call them home. They got rid of Bill Knapp's, my first job. That was God's original waiting room because it's ancient clientele.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. You got in a little bit of everything. I hope it helps your congressional run. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. You've given us some wonderful information, and I want to encourage our listeners to please to check the tabs out that we're going to have coming with the website. All of the links to the book and to Ron's website, his contact information. You can find him on LinkedIn as well. And if you have any questions, I know that Ron will answer you. If you message him on LinkedIn, I'm sure he will get back to you. He's very good about responding. Thank you so much, Ron, and thank you everyone for listening. Please go to our website at justeducationfirst.com. Again, keep in touch with us. So many of the people that I have had as guests are because you as listeners have been in touch with me and have either recommended a topic or one of the guests, and you're pointing me in directions that I may not have gone to on my own. So I very much appreciate it. Be well, stay safe, and thank you again for being with us.
And thanks so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, mentors, for being with us today. If you found this podcast of value, please visit justeducationfirst.com to subscribe to our blog and Mentorship and Education podcast so that you may continue the exploration with us. Our goal is to provide a free treasury of information for our listeners so they can become acquainted with the amazing resources that we have available to us. We want to thank all of our guests for giving their time and sharing their wealth of information with us. Please also visit their websites and explore more of their resources to further your pursuit of the topic. Hope to hear from you at justeducationfirst.com. Have a good week, and thank you.